Welcome to our THInC Share for the spring semester. Today we have Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick sharing about a project that she's going to undertake on Rocket Kids and international experience in teacher education. So Dr. Fitzpatrick, thank you for being here and take it over.
Thanks for having me. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this project that I'm beginning. It is not IRB approved, so I'm going to be asking questions as I'm kind of thinking through this process and some of the issues that I am grappling with. So for this work that I'm doing with Rocket Kids, it's twofold. The first one is I want to look at how we can increase participation in Rocket Kids for our students, specifically within teacher education. So how can we kind of merge these two ideas together? There's a desperate need for students to participate in the program. How can we bake it in, I guess? I also want to understand the benefit of the participation in Rocket Kids. So what is this doing for our students? The background, there's no doubt that American classrooms are becoming increasingly racially, ethnically, linguistically diverse in any way that you want to define it. The population is changing. They contain more students of diverse backgrounds than they did 10 years ago, and it's only going to grow over the next 10 years. So there's been a call by the AACTE, the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, that educator preparation programs need to meet this challenge. So they need to incorporate global perspectives, cross-cultural competencies, and diverse educational practices. So if we're going to do this, we need to find different ways to teach these for our future teachers. One of the ways that AACTE and other organizations are pushing is through abroad opportunities to allow future teachers to go abroad and to live and work in different cultures. So there's some benefits that we can look at for abroad programs in general, but then also specifically for teacher education programs. So abroad programs have shown that students have a better understanding of culture and implement more culturally responsive teaching. They do this because they're also understanding their own culture. So it's the analogy of a fish swimming in water. They don't understand the water around them until they leave the water. So they're understanding their home culture. They're getting exposed to a culture. For the Rocket Kids, it will be, in Italy and Germany, Netherlands, but also they're placed within a military culture, which is very different if students have not experienced living and being around the military. So it's almost these three different cultures that are working together. It's also doing some teaching abroad has also shown that teachers will have more confidence in their own abilities. They're put into a situation that is new and it's unfamiliar, and they're forced to navigate it, and they gain confidence in their own personal life, but then that can also transfer into a lot of their management and in their classroom and their lesson planning. And yet, there are very limited opportunities for abroad programs in teacher education. There's a variety of reasons of them. Probably the one that's most commonly cited is just it's becoming such a structured degree. So in Ohio, we now have all of the literacy courses and the science of reading. There's going to be pushes with the science of social studies, whatever it is, with the change in the P8 licensure. All of these are going to be very structured programs. So how can we kind of infuse what are the places that we can look for to have them work together? So into Rocket Kids, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Rocket Kids. I'm running under the assumption that we know a little bit about it, but I will do kind of the 10,000-foot overview. Also, I know that Dr. Span has spoken about it in our college meetings in different places. In Rocket Kids, the interns are placed in military installations right now, currently through Europe, but the military is desperate to get more people. So they would love to expand it domestically through bases in the United States, but also into Asia, specifically into Japan and South Korea. So the Rocket Kid interns, they apply to be part of the program. When they're accepted, they take a series of 3 courses to prepare them to work at either the Child Development Center or day camps if it's during the summer for older children. The programs run 10 to 12 weeks, depending on if you're in the summer or fall or spring. The students here at UT have the opportunity to earn a certificate in child and youth learning and development. I'm going to focus a little bit on the classes that they take because that's going to be the most important for the research that I'm hoping to, I guess, undertake. So the first one is EDU 1010, which they take prior to departure. So it is the way that people who have taken it have referred to it as it's a boot camp, in a very positive, fun learning boot camp. But it is introduction to educational psychology. I transferred off some of the student learning objectives that kind of, I think, give the best overview as to what the course is. So it does a little bit of educational psychology, but also they look at curricular design. They get their CPR, first aid training. It's a lot of information compressed into a small amount of time. So they take this prior to departure when they're trying to figure out what it is that they're going to be doing and what it is to work with children. EDU 2010 is taken abroad. This is where students, they deeply explore the context that they are in. They look at the physical structures. So we've talked about this in the teacher ed department as to how is the classroom set up? What's the space like? They examine the standards for their particular grade level. So if they're in the day camp working with middle school, they look at what are the standards put out by DODEA, the Department of Defense Educational Administration, I think is that A. What are the standards put out by them? So they're looking at the standards with what's going on in their programs. And then we have EDU 1030, which is their practicum. So they have evaluations by a mentor teacher that's in the same child development center or day camp. They work on professional plans, goal setting, how they accomplish it. But they also look at developing global competence through cross-cultural opportunities and experiences. And again, this is twofold because we can look at the country that they are in, whether it's in Italy, Germany, I believe the Netherlands. So there is that cross-cultural, but it's also being on a military installation is a whole other culture. I grew up in the military and it's just a different world. There's different expectations. You don't know, are these students, are these children, are their parents deployed? Are they having, they're isolated from other families. So it's very, it can be very intense while they are abroad. So it's looking at almost at this dual culture. So yes, they are American students. They could be NATO, so you're talking other things, but it's still a different culture. It's a different climate that is there. So that's kind of an overview of abroad programs and Rocket Kids in particular. And then this is kind of where I'm running into a few speed bumps with the IRB. So my ultimate goal is to think about it in a 3-phase data collection. So doing prior departure, which would be the EDU 1010 course, during their time abroad, EDU 1020, 1030, and then upon return to the university. One of the questions that I have is looking at participants, are we just interested in UT? They're technically all UT students, but undergrad students who will continue their education here. How should I focus in on participants in this study? So looking at the 3 phases, the first one is the prior to departure. So obviously during this phase, I'll present the research to Rocket Kid interns, distribute and collect consent forms. I will be interested kind of collecting the assignments from 1010. A lot of it is just, what are you expecting from this program? Who are you? What brought you to this program? And that I think would come out a lot with interviews. I can look at, okay, you are a business major at UT or finance, electrical engineering, but why are you doing this program? What is it about working with youth? Is it an international component? What's going on? Why are you choosing this? And then kind of ultimately seeing how that shapes or how it's changed by the program. So the phase 1 is really getting to know why they're here, what are their desires, and what experience do they have with youth. So then phase 2 would be while abroad. There's a lot of assignments that I would hope to collect from both 1020 and 1030. Program evaluations is digging into the standards, the DODEA standards, talking about the ethics and critical decision-making of working with youth. The curriculum planning and implementation is, they're planning, they have to submit unit plans and have them evaluated prior to teaching. So what are those looking like? Are they, aligning with best practice? And then the bottom 3 are there's a lot more reflection that goes into it. So it's not the curricular planning. The cultural experience portfolio is really looking at what are the experiences? What is this globally in the country that you're in, but also in the military, these experiences? And then they have to do reflection on their goal statements that they set at the beginning. Did they reach these goals? What are they going to do to continue those? I would also like to interview with participants periodically through their 10 to 12 week time abroad, just to have them time to think through these experiences. How's it going? How has this changed? And have them just kind of reflect on that. I put potential observations of interns on site because there's a lot of question marks and logistics to go through that. One being getting there. I think it would be good to see the sites and see interactions and have students kind of reflect on that. So if I spend a day working with them and then breaking something down at the end as to why they made decisions or talking about the experience at large, I firmly believe in place-based and understanding the nature of where you are. But there are a lot of loopholes, not loopholes, there are a lot of roadblocks to getting into a site with students. So we'll see if it happens. Ideally, I would like to do that. And then return from abroad would be follow-ups. I'd like to see the overall reflections of the program. I want to look at what this means for their career. Are people thinking, you know what, I really liked working with youth. This is something that I want to pursue. I know that I came in as an electrical engineer, but you know what, maybe I want to be working with students and teachers. And what connections are they making with their current college classes, their current programs? What are they thinking? If we look at, we'll get into the data analysis that I'm thinking of, but is this looking at, the competencies that we've put out from either CAPE or AACTE for what we want, or even AACU for what undergraduates are supposed to be getting? Can we align this program? Can we show that we have the data that aligns with the expectations, the goals that we want for undergraduate students? That's methods. I'm working through the data analysis as to, I fully admit I'm a qualitative researcher. I don't always have a data analysis plan set at the beginning, but that's okay because I'm not writing my dissertation anymore. So these are the questions that I'm currently running into with my dialogue with IRB and things that I'm grappling with as to ultimately what is the purpose of this research, where would I want it to go? So one is with participants. Do I want to open it with any Rocket Kid intern? I'm thinking the fall and the spring, the participants, there's much fewer participants. So almost running like a preliminary, let's work the kinks out with a really small group of people in the fall and the spring, so that the summer when there's 75 students, I have a little bit of these things worked out. So then for this full one, do I want to focus on any Rocket Kid intern, UT students in general, just, I guess it will be JCAS students. I don't know what the
JCAS, yeah.
Whatever. We'll get into. Is it then even narrowed down and teacher ed students? How specific do I want to be? Because clearly the participants are going to shape the research, who it is. So do I cast a wide net, or do I stay focused, or do I just pass out consent forms and see who says yes, which could be one thing. I'm trying to think about the utility of observations. I really want to do it. I think it would be a good experience, but will I be gaining data? Will I be gaining information that I would get not from interviews or from their assignments? My gut says yes, but I would like to hear that. I'm also looking at, I'm trying to stretch myself as a researcher. Do I want to look at specific frameworks. Do I want to look at the competencies of teacher education? Do I want to look at measurements of intercultural sensitivity? Like, or do I want to, analyze these things on scales that have been looked at, for reliability and validity? Like, is that the way that I want to go? Do I want to look at what we have as our programs in teacher education and use that as a way to analyze what is happening with the work and with the program? So those are kind of the questions that I have and I'm posing to myself and now posing to you. So my next steps and timelines, I really would like to have this IRB approved by May, but that could be a pipe dream because it's April 2nd and they meet once a month. So I would like to recruit the participants in the fall. So when they're taking the 10-10 course, people who go abroad in the fall take 10-10 over the summer. So that'd be great to get them so I could have that, kind of follow them through the whole process. But realistically speaking, it would be 10-10 in the fall and then follow them for spring 1, spring 2 with their abroad. So that's 21 minutes. So what I have right now, because again, I'm thinking through all of the questions that are being asked by IRB. So really what I want to come is I want to hear everyone's thoughts on these or other ways you think that I can use this research, or what else are we looking, if I'm looking to strengthen the tie between Rocket Kids and teacher education, what are other avenues, angles that I need to look at?
So, yeah, in terms of the IRB stuff, these students are adults, right? Are you going for anything other than an exempt study? Like,
no.
Okay. Exempt used to be just the committee didn't have to meet. They just.
It is, but it's getting the feedback. So I have another IRB that is just literally taking class assignments, and I had to do 7 revisions.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just the way that it's working. I think across the board, grad students are facing it.
Oh yeah,
so
I'm grappling with a couple of students right now but so to me, my counsel for what it's worth is if this is let's say you went with a case study kind of approach, right? Then you have to decide, what is this a case of? That's always the research question of case studies. And then is it a single case or is it more than one case? And it's a single case in the sense of they're all going to have a common experience here, but it may well be multiple cases. And this is where this place observation comes in, because it's one thing if your experience abroad is not actually abroad. Like some of the students are going to be placed in like Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, for example. Okay, well that's in Tucson, Arizona. That's
so right now they're all in Europe.
Okay.
So.
But it used to be like they'd send some people to Alaska, they'd send some people to, so they're not doing the
program. No, that's not the program anymore.
Okay.
No, that right now they're all in Europe, okay. And I'm betting because the military is pushing. I'm not joking when I say they are desperate for people.
Okay.
So I would say the next place, like if we can get more people involved, the next place I would bet is going to be Asia.
Right.
And then it would come back domestically. But they want people. Yeah, because everybody's forward. Their goal is to get like 300 people a semester. So 300 people in the fall, 300 people in the spring, 300 people in the, and we're just like,
wow.
Yeah, so we have a lot of growth, and that would be, I mean, in my mind, really good for university. Like, look what we're doing. We're creating these partnerships. We're getting our name out there. The superintendent of Dodea something in Europe is a UT alum. Like, so we're like, it would be really good, I think, for us to get this.
Yeah.
When you say measurements of intercultural sense, is that something IRB is wanting, or is that something?
That's more for me. IRB is more about like they want me to be very specific with my participants,
Right.
very specific with I got it returned because I said a locked file, and I had it returned because it was a locked, the comment was, is this a paper file or is it a computer file? So that was a full.
Yeah.
Turnaround.
Yeah.
Password protected.
Is it password protected or is it locked? So like those types of things I get, but the participants is something that I have to put in there, and the observations are something that I have to do with IRB. The other things I can think about, as I go through data analysis, because I'm not going to have them do survey. I'm not asking them to do surveys. It would be more of like the measurements when I'm looking through their reflection, their global competency papers. Are they meeting this? Overall, when they're doing their curriculum, when they're doing these things, are they increasing in their competencies of teacher education? So the bottom two don't have to be IRB. That is for me to think through how to look at the data. And that conversation can continue for a while, but the top two I need to really think through now-ish to get this IRB off the ground.
And the first one really lends itself to the second one because it's going to depend on what students you're looking at and how many in terms of cases. Is it one case or are we doing multiple case studies? And when you observe, I think the place observation is critical, for you to see where they're at and how these places operate, which may be a couple days of observations. But I don't know that means, it depends on how many students you're looking at. I don't know that means you need to observe every student in situations. That might not be necessary, but certainly I think it seems pivotal to me that you be in these places.
At least spending some time in each space. So looking at like the Vicenza versus Stuttgart, looking at the CDC versus the day camps, like in the after school, those types of things.
Visual and just the gestalt of how things operate.
Yeah, and if I'm looking at, because then that I think would also allow me to look more at the competencies of teacher education, because if I'm even taking with analysis, like how they are interacting with students, like how are they interacting with these children? What's the back and forth? How are they creating a positive learning environment? All of these things, I think would come better through observations than through reflection papers.
Right.
Well, and the other thing is there's a unit of analysis issue of, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds as if the unit of analysis is the person who's been prepared here and is going abroad, but we're doing observations. The unit of analysis could also be, how did that change the site as well? Like are there effects on the childcare setting itself, which is a different unit of analysis, right? And I don't know if you're.
I mean, if I want to go back to I remember it's like page 18 in chapter whatever, and it had those 4 images of like an embedded case study, single, so it would be an embedded case study because I would look at the individuals, but then to me, the larger case needs to be the program. So I can look at an individual and what they're moving, how they're moving on these.
And that's the justification for field observations, because if the unit of analysis is bigger than just the individual, there's a reason to go.
Right.
Yep. There's some questions online.
There's people.
Yep. So, Mark, you good?
I'm good.
Okay. So a question was about what year in college do Rocket Kids entrants typically go abroad?
So they have to have established a year at a university.
Okay.
So that's the earliest you can do, but I have some students who graduated and then went abroad. So they graduated from here with their bachelor's in, AYA social studies, graduated in May. They did Rocket Kids in the fall, and now they're long-term subbing.
Okay.
And so it's all over.
So at least a year. And then what ages are the children in the various programs abroad?
It can be, so the child development centers are 0 through 5. So that's going to be, and then that's broken up. You have your pre-K, preschool, toddler, infant classrooms. And then you have if you go in the summer, you can do the day camp. And that would be 5 through 13. And that's broken up into, different, I think it's a little bit of overlapping in case they want siblings to stay together. And then there's, if you go in the school year, that fall and spring, you can do some work with after school, which would be that 5 through 13. But it's just, they finish the school day and then they come and you have to provide programming and educational resources for them.
And then how long are the students in the abroad program?
10 to 12 weeks, depending on when they go.
Callie, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I was just sort of thinking about your questions about measurements of intercultural sensitivity and competencies of teacher ed. I'm kind of curious what the programs look like compared to, for example, the United States sort of education system. I mean, the military sort of base system, right? Because they're not within the country proper, or are they? Like, I guess I'm not sure about what kinds of differences they're experiencing, if that makes sense.
I'm not sure I'm understanding.
Okay, so when they go abroad or they go to Stuttgart or whatever, they're on a military base, correct?
Yes.
So is that base more similar to the programs in the United States in terms of child development, or is it more similar to the German programs that are in the area? I guess that's what I'm getting at.
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a really good question. And I don't know that.
Because I think that does matter for what you're looking at. If you're looking at competencies of teacher education, some of that would be in comparison, right? I would assume to what they're experiencing here. Because there's going to be, I mean, obviously ways of teaching in different countries are clearly different than what we do. The one that I think sticks out to me is the measurements of intercultural sensitivity. And, that's why I was asking about how long they're there, because the longer you're there, the more sort of you get into what that other culture is like, right? If you visit for a week, you're going to get a tourist approach. You're going to get just a little snapshot of. But if you're there quite a bit longer, then you can kind of get more of a handle on the culture. And I think that would be very interesting, considering how multicultural or diverse like you mentioned, our schools are now.
Yeah. Because it does, there are areas where it overlaps, right? If we look at, I think the two can work together. But I think, again, this is maybe part of getting there, is seeing what it is, right? Because someone can explain it to me, but I need to see it in action.
Did you have any other questions, Kelly?
Just it was interesting to me the connection that you were talking about between what their experiences in the Rocket Kids program to their classes and their programs at UT. What is it bringing to it? What are the classes they would have had already that would lend themselves well to having this experience? Those kind of questions are interesting. Because, depending, I guess, on which program they go into. You asked the question about which group of students, and while the engineering major is an interesting take, I think if you're particularly interested in teacher ed, then I would think focusing on teacher educators or people that are already sort of headed that direction might be interesting and more sort of directed a focus. Yeah. So
here's two thoughts on this. The classes I'm interested in, because right now they get the certificate. And this is not to speak ill of a certificate, but it's also, I want to find a way to make these classes count. Because if we can find a way that, and this is, I've opened up so many cans of worms, and I never even knew certain cans of worms existed to not open them, but I did it. So looking at can we argue for some of these to be part of the university core? Can we look at them to be cross-listed and count, can 1010 count for ed psych, because they do a lot, like, can we tweak these? So like there's, section 1 of 1010 is for anyone, and then section 2 is for people who are in teacher education, and maybe they have to do a little bit more ed psych things. Can we look at, so that's what I'm interested in talking to them about their classes and the parallels that they see through there. Mm-hmm. One of the issues I think that I mean, honestly, and I can ask, Dr. Span these questions, is looking at realistically not a ton of our students, of teacher ed students, are doing this program. So if I just focus on our teacher ed students, the participants would be really small. And that's, to me, is like, if we're going to believe in this program, and from every anecdotal conversation I've had with someone who does it, they've said how it's changed their life. They've brought them into these different career paths. They've done all of these things. So if we're going to do that, then how can we get more of our teacher ed students to do it in this highly structured world where they have to take 10,000 literacy courses and so how can we bake it in a little?
I think it's a challenge. I think it's interesting because that's why I was asking what ages the child development programs were, because I mean, I've taught the preschool cohort 1 class for early childhood ed students, and most of them sort of do the early childhood, the preschool part sort of reluctantly, and I don't mean that in a mean way, but they are focused on elementary ed, right? That's where they want to be, and that's where they want to have classes. And so I'm curious what current students in the program are thinking about that, right? Like, exactly, like, why aren't they? I don't know if there's been any research or any questions asked about why our students aren't doing the abroad program. Is it because they're worried about missing their cohort classes? Is it you know what I mean? If they're going to do.
And that would be a whole other research thing, is to talk to people who don't do it.
Yes. Yeah.
But we can do that anecdotally. I can ask my class that, like, why are you not doing this?
Right.
Why? And I look for so many parallels, and looking at that infant toddler class, that it could be really good. Like, if we could cross list that, like, because the majority of them will be in that 0 to 5 range.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Could we work that out so that is, and then I'm going to get things thrown at me by some people. Right. But like, to me, that seems like a really natural way to bake it in, to work it in, that, when you're taking your infant, you have the option to do it here at university. We can never force people to go abroad. I fully understand that. You have option A, do it here, or option B, do Rocket Kids. And you can get, and if we can, again, it's going to take a little tweaking of the courses, which I think Sammy is willing to do. I don't know if Sammy's on this or if anyone's going to report me to him, but I think that there's a willingness to do this.
Right. I think if
it can work together.
Yeah, I think if it's a cross class where you can do one or the other, that would be really helpful, because obviously most students are wanting to finish on time. They want to have the classes they need and get through.
Right.
So I would imagine that's part of it.
Right. And they don't want to fund an extra,
Right.
So.
Yeah.
So that also speaks to the danger of if you just study the teacher ed kids, then we miss those other sort of life-changing stories.
Right.
What happens when you bring in non-education people into an educational setting and they work with young people?
I mean, the way that I'm thinking now is even just do a blanket consent forms, right? And then analyze, then do groups. So if I'm talking cases, here's a case of the teacher ed students in here. And here's the people, the engineers who have said, I want to work with students. I'm going to find ways, whether it's teaching or it's things like that. I don't know.
I think you have probably 5 different subgroups, right? So one is those students who don't do the program, right? And then it's like, why not? Particularly the people who are already declared majors in education, why aren't you doing this? Okay, that's one sort of situation. But then the others are declared major who goes abroad, declared major who goes into the program who doesn't go abroad, because not everybody who's in the program actually goes abroad. So when you're talking about competencies of teacher ed, you're looking at, okay, the didactic pieces of this program, what do they do versus the didactic plus the experiential pieces, right? Those are two different cases, if you will. And then you've got non-declared major, same thing. Non-declared major who doesn't go abroad, non-declared major who does go abroad. And maybe they learn other lessons that are not exactly teacher ed centric.
Right. Are they getting more from this? So, yeah.
And it's not just go abroad, it's go abroad in this specific program, which is educational by nature.
I mean, this is vastly different than, I mean, I did London for 6 weeks, and this is vastly different than that.
This is not riverboat cruises.
No, this is not. These kids are working.
Right. They're not just taking classes and goofing off.
Right. They are full-time employed, but they make a lot of time for fun, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I have a few comments, suggestions, questions, follow-up, if I can share.
Sure.
So, and they might be repeats, but I think it's okay. So I'm thinking of like the evaluation work I do, the grant work I do, the grant reviewers, right? They're always looking for a table. Like one table would be like, what's your research question? What's the data you're collecting that goes with it? I feel like if you haven't done that, a map of that will help. Evaluation is very similar, where it's like, okay, what is like the evaluation question you're trying to answer? When is it collected? Why are you collecting it? What are you collecting? Right? And who's going to do it? Like a table like that. I got some I can share with you.
Yeah.
And I feel, because it goes back to like your original goals, right? About increasing the connection between UT students and the program, right? And that's like my question, my brain goes like, okay, how are you going to measure those two things and then correlate them, right? Like I don't see how that's possible quantitatively. So one thing I also wonder about is like, okay, so you got the program. You have ideas about what you think you're going to move, right? What do you think are the big outcomes you're going to move? Like the students will change the most in. Those are the things that I would collect data on.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
So maybe, okay, so that's a question.
To me is why I want to do the smaller cohort first.
So, okay, so back now, another point is basically do pilot in the fall, do pilot in the spring, work out the kinks, like you said, do it.
Yeah.
All this stuff.
If I can get the IRB done, that's the plan, is to
and
start
then,
that.
so then another, I mean, again, a question of like, are you talk about observations, you talk about some of the homeworks. I'm looking at some of the literature, like in psychology and like literacy areas, right? Journaling is a big thing. And you can have journaling collected at wide variety of points across.
That's one of the assignments is journaling that they have to do. And they submit, I think like every other week, they have to submit a journal. It could be every week, but that's part of, I think 1020 that they have to submit that.
Yeah, and there's ways that we can not only look at it qualitatively, but if there are key things you're wanting to look at, right, we can also look at that data longitudinally and analyze it. Yeah. So sometimes these types of analyses.
I mean, to me, it's a ton of data, and that's
very exploratory.
Yeah.
I mean, so back to the participants part, I would say if there's no reason not to get them all, because there's a wide variety of questions that can be answered, right? And the more information you have, the more informed decisions you can make off of it about the program, what's working, not working.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was the intercultural sensitivity or the cultural competency, I think earlier, right? So, I mean, there are a variety of measures that can be used for collecting that. Dr. Kumar is pretty well versed in that. I've worked with her a little bit on that. So we can talk about possible measures and even work out the kinks in them in the pilot in the fall and spring as a possibility.
Yeah.
Is there, okay, so I think Mark kind of alluded to it already, and I think Kelly did too, about those not participating. So again, in the world of evaluation, if you can sometimes actually collect data from those that are not participating, but it's available to them, and collect some of the same data points from them. So like the cultural competency or intercultural sensitivity, there's no harm in asking those folks to collect those measurement points as well. So then you can say, okay, let's look at those in the program, they change, versus those in the control group that are not participating, right?
Yeah.
Not showing as much change. Because you made the point earlier, based on the literature, that those that do these broad programs, right, actually increase in self-efficacy, right, and cultural competency. So why don't you show it?
Yeah, I mean, logistically speaking, I am already vastly overwhelmed by the amount of data and the amount of.
How about we help you in this?
Yeah, but that's, I mean, so getting the GA, but like getting all of that it's very overwhelming to me. Like, I feel like this is dissertation 2.0.
We'll talk further about how we can help you.
And that, I feel like someone could take this and create 3 different dissertations from it. And so, yeah.
That was all the comments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll do this again in 3 years. I'll have a lot more gray. Yeah.
Were there any other folks online that had questions? Kelly, any additional questions? Wei, Connie? Mark?
I just wanted to touch back on, I think, Michael, you were talking about was a logic model, right? Like this table with these various, right? Like.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't exactly a logic model, but like,
yeah,
I mean, it can be in a similar fashion.
It's along that, kind of like that qualitative version of a logic model, which the beauty of that would be if at some point in the future you want to seek further funding, that already exists, and you can show, well, here were the big outcomes that we looked at. So, and it'll help you get a research proposal together quicker or later, if nothing else. But it also will shape your thinking about the current project. So it's like a 2-for-1 kind of thing, which is nice.
Yeah.
Mark, I'm looking for tomorrow. You're talking like 5 years in there.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any other questions, then we'll wrap up early and have an extra 10 minutes or so. So thank you all here in person and online for attending, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay dry spring semester, and then we'll see you back in the fall with some of the THInC Share and THInC Smart venues. Thank you.
It's a losing battle.